They say the scariest stories aren't told in the dark. They begin in the light, during the most ordinary moments, when no one expects terror to arrive. On May 14, 2008, a 19-year-old Minnesota student named Brandon Swanson lived through one such moment. It was the night of a college semester's end. His car wasn't racing down a highway or swerving through trouble. It was slowly, calmly heading home. And then, just like that, Brandon disappeared. But not before one last eerie phone call. One that ended mid-sentence. Brandon had just finished classes at Minnesota West Community and Technical College in Canby. To celebrate the semester's end, he joined friends for a night out. Reports say he didn't appear intoxicated and was being his usual upbeat self. Around midnight, he left the gathering to drive back to his hometown of Marshall, a 30-mile stretch through mostly flat farmland and a few winding roads. Nothing unusual. No storm. No danger. No threats. Until, out of nowhere, his car veered into a ditch. Brandon called his parents. He sounded calm. He said he was fine, unhurt, but couldn't get his car out of the ditch. He told them he believed he was near Lind, a small town just a few miles from Marshall. So his father got into the car to pick him up. They stayed on the phone the entire time. Brandon described landmarks he saw, fences, gravel roads, lights in the distance. But when his parents reached the exact area he described, he wasn't there. The confusion grew quickly. Brandon then said, "I'll walk toward the lights. Meet me there." The phone call continued for nearly 47 minutes. Through most of it, Brandon stayed calm, giving updates like, "I'm still walking," and "I can see the lights." But then, his voice shifted. He suddenly exclaimed, "Oh, expletive!" And the line went dead. No sound of struggle. No footsteps. No goodbye. It's what came after that continues to haunt investigators, his parents, and anyone who's heard the case. No body, no clues, no trace. As if Brandon walked right off the edge of the world. After Brandon Swanson's phone went silent, the panic set in. His parents, Annette and Brian Swanson, immediately tried to call him back, over and over. The phone rang, but there was no answer. Not once. Not even a voicemail. Just an endless dial tone that offered no clues and no comfort. Imagine that fear. Knowing your child is out there, walking alone in the dark, and suddenly, nothing. By sunrise, the Swansons reported Brandon missing, but the reaction they received from law enforcement was one of casual dismissal. He was 19, an adult. Maybe he ran away. Maybe he was just upset. The idea that a responsible young man vanished mid-call while calmly chatting with his parents? That didn't seem urgent enough. Critical hours ticked by. Eventually, police agreed to start a basic search. The first step was obvious: find his car. But this only deepened the mystery. Authorities located Brandon's vehicle, not near Lind as he believed, but nearly 25 miles away, in a small rural area near Taunton. That meant everything Brandon described during his call, the fences, the lights, the roads, had been misplaced in his mind. Or had they? The geography didn't add up. If he had been that far off course, what else had he misunderstood? But friends and family insisted Brandon was sharp. He didn't drink that much. He was not the type to hallucinate or get confused. Could something else have made him disoriented? The terrain near Taunton consisted of open fields, ditches, and shallow creeks. No steep cliffs, no forest, and certainly nowhere someone could vanish so completely. Search teams, dogs, helicopters, and even thermal imaging were used in the days that followed. The bloodhounds followed Brandon's scent from his car down a gravel road, then across 2 fields, and even across a shallow river. They traced him for nearly 3 miles. Then, it stopped. Dead. No sign of a fall, injury, or struggle. Just empty grass and endless sky. Why did Brandon walk that far in the dark instead of staying with his car? Did he see something, or someone, that made him leave? Theories started to multiply. Some believed he fell into the river, but there was no body. Others suspected foul play, yet no footprints, no torn clothing, no dropped phone were found. It was as if the earth had swallowed him up. As weeks turned into months with no trace of Brandon Swanson, the case shifted from a local mystery to something that gripped online forums, amateur sleuth communities, and cold case investigators. Everyone had an idea, but the lack of concrete evidence made speculation the only currency. And what people came up with ranged from chillingly plausible to eerily surreal. The first and most popular theory was the simplest: accidental death by misadventure. Brandon may have continued walking in the dark, unaware of his true location, and eventually succumbed to the elements or a hidden hazard. Maybe he fell into a deeper part of the Yellow Medicine River that had been overlooked. But even that didn't explain everything. Cadaver dogs had swept the area multiple times. The river was shallow and not violent. Bodies don't just vanish without a trace. Not without something helping them disappear. Another theory emerged: foul play. Some believe Brandon may have stumbled onto something he wasn't supposed to see. Perhaps an illegal activity in a remote location. The idea was that someone in the dark farmland, possibly using the area for trafficking or drug-related dealings, saw Brandon and acted fast. This could explain why his scent trail stopped so abruptly. A vehicle could have picked him up, or worse, something more permanent could have happened, and the evidence was erased before daylight. But there's also the odd behavior in Brandon's final call. He was calm, yes, but was he also being watched? Some have speculated that his decision to leave the car and move toward the lights was not just disorientation, but manipulation. What if someone had approached him, claiming to offer help, but then led him astray? His calm demeanor could have been a way to avoid alarm, until something startled him, resulting in that final, chilling expletive. One lesser-known but truly strange theory connects Brandon's disappearance to other missing person cases across the Midwest, particularly ones that involve young men vanishing near bodies of water after nights out. Some researchers have linked them to the so-called smiley face killer theory, where victims are found in rivers under strange conditions, often with graffiti symbols nearby. While Brandon's case doesn't have a confirmed symbol, the eerie similarities were enough to fuel deeper conspiracies. Still, nothing has ever surfaced to validate any of these claims. No suspects, no credible sightings, and more hauntingly, no motive. In most modern missing person cases, digital footprints play a critical role. Text messages, app activity, GPS pings, all can become breadcrumbs leading to truth. But in Brandon Swanson's case, the digital trail is strangely silent. This was 2008. Smartphones weren't as advanced, but still, phones left traces. Yet after his last, expletive, on the call with his father, Brandon's phone went dark, permanently. That moment, the sudden end of a call with no crash, no scream, no scuffle, haunted investigators. His phone continued to ring for nearly 24 hours after his disappearance, giving the family hope that it was still turned on. But ping data was inconsistent. Only one tower picked up a vague signal. No GPS location, no app data, not even a stray message, like a light switch being flicked off. Some investigators argued that Brandon's phone battery may have simply died. Others wondered if water or damage shut it off. But if Brandon had slipped or fallen, wouldn't the phone have been found? Search crews covered every inch of the mapped area. If the phone had been dropped or destroyed, fragments should have been discovered. Yet there was nothing. Even more unnerving was how his call had been so normal up until that last second. Brandon was giving directions, describing what he saw. There was no winded breath, no panic, no fear in his voice. Then, mid-step, something happened, and the line went dead. It's almost cinematic in its horror, like a scene from a thriller where the protagonist disappears just out of frame. What makes this case unique is how modern tech offered no lifeline. There were no social media clues, no digital wallet activity, no access to his email or logs of further calls. His last message to the world was live, verbal, and instantly lost. Some online sleuths believe the silence was intentional, that someone took the phone and turned it off, or perhaps used it to mislead investigators for a while. The ringing phone might have been a false signal, not Brandon's location, but a decoy. Others argue that this moment marked something more surreal. A true disappearance, not just from the physical world, but from the systems that track us all. It was as though Brandon Swanson had been erased. When a loved one disappears, the mind doesn't rest. And neither did Brandon Swanson's parents. After that haunting call in the dark, Brian and Annette Swanson turned into tireless advocates and investigators. Their son had vanished, but they refused to let him be forgotten. What followed was not just a missing person case. It was a relentless crusade, driven by heartbreak and the refusal to accept silence as closure. The search efforts were exhaustive. Ground crews combed the fields, ditches, and riverbanks around Taunton and Porter. Helicopters with infrared, cadaver dogs, dive teams, and even volunteers on horseback covered more than 100 square miles. They searched in summer heat and winter cold, year after year. Despite their efforts, not a single article of Brandon's clothing, nor his phone, nor a personal item ever surfaced. It's important to understand how psychologically taxing this was. Each time a lead came in, a sighting, a rumor, a footprint in mud, hope rose, only to crash again. Some neighbors claimed to have heard yelling the night Brandon vanished, but they hadn't called it in. Others thought they might have seen someone walking along the roads near the outskirts of town, but no sighting was ever verified. The geography of western Minnesota didn't help. The area is mostly flat farmland, crisscrossed with irrigation ditches, creeks, and patches of dense brush. It's easy to become disoriented, especially at night. But even then, nature leaves traces. Someone walking through wet grass leaves footprints. Someone falling leaves broken branches. Brandon left nothing. As the years went on, the searches became more targeted. Cadaver dogs were brought back multiple times to the Yellow Medicine River, and some alerts were noted. But no body, bones, or clothing were found. Even in areas where water was shallow and slow-moving, Brandon's trail seemed to vanish in midair. It was as if the land had swallowed him whole. But here's what's different about this case. The emotional geography was just as vast. This wasn't just about where Brandon disappeared. It was about where his memory still echoed. His parents turned his case into a cause. They pushed for legislative changes. They gave interviews. They attended every search with quiet hope, refusing to let their son be reduced to a statistic. What started as a tragedy became a mission, and the further they searched, the deeper the mystery grew. Imagine this. You're on the phone with your son. He's somewhere in the dark, walking beside a road you can't see. He sounds calm, even confident. Then, out of nowhere, he says, "Oh, expletive." And the line goes dead. No scream, no scuffle, just silence. Now imagine that moment playing on a loop in your mind. Not for hours, not for days, but for years. That was the reality Brian and Annette Swanson faced. In the world of unsolved mysteries, there are cases with suspects, motives, and leads that go cold. But Brandon's disappearance was different. There was no trail to go cold. It never even started. What haunts people about Brandon's story is the stillness of it all. The eerie quiet. No one heard anything, saw anything, or found anything. It's not just that he vanished. It's that he seemed to pause time itself for everyone involved. This moment, the call that ended mid-sentence, has inspired endless theories. Some believe Brandon may have fallen into an unmarked well, culvert, or hidden ravine. But such places would have likely revealed something by now. Others suggest the possibility of a hit and run, and that someone may have disposed of evidence. But how do you erase a person so completely, without leaving a single mistake? There's another, more chilling theory. One that taps into deeper fears. That Brandon may have encountered someone, or something, out there. A person with a vehicle, a predator, a random stranger with intent. If so, the abrupt end of the call could have marked the moment of confrontation. But if that were true, how did they manage to make Brandon's phone disappear, his body vanish, and silence follow for over a decade? It's this exact void, the lack of conclusion, that gives Brandon's case its surreal quality. It doesn't follow the usual patterns of missing person cases. There's no indication of premeditation, no hints of harm, and no trace of foul play. Just that jarring cut in the call, like a glitch in reality. And that's why so many people, from professional investigators to internet sleuths, remain obsessed. The timeline is clear. The path he was walking is mapped. Yet it still feels like Brandon stepped off the edge of the world. When a mystery refuses to fade, it's not because people want to cling to tragedy. It's because logic hasn't won yet. In Brandon Swanson's case, logic limps while theories sprint. His disappearance has triggered waves of speculation, and some of these theories are not just persistent. They're almost obsessive. One of the earliest explanations considered was a tragic accident. That Brandon had simply fallen into the Yellow Medicine River and drowned. Authorities conducted multiple sonar scans and dive missions. Cadaver dogs sniffed out possible points of interest, but again, nothing was recovered, not even a shoe. Water can be cruel, but it usually returns what it takes. And this river wasn't particularly wide or deep enough to hide a person forever. Then came the predator theory. What if Brandon had been picked up by someone passing through? His last known area was remote, but not unreachable by road. Could he have flagged down what he thought was a helpful stranger, only for the encounter to turn dark? If this were the case, it would explain the abrupt, "oh" expletive and the dropped call. But even then, why no DNA? No digital trail? No abandoned belongings? Another group of theorists began to suspect the people closest to the case. Could someone Brandon knew have followed him, possibly after a falling out or misunderstanding that night? This would introduce an element of cover-up. But nothing in Brandon's relationship suggested danger. He wasn't in trouble, nor was there any suspicious behavior among his friends or family after the incident. In a more unusual direction, some online sleuths have explored paranormal or fringe possibilities. The area where Brandon disappeared is dotted with Native American burial grounds and local legends. There are whispers of window areas, places where reality itself thins, leading to vanishing phenomena. While this I sound like fiction. In the absence of hard facts, even the implausible starts feeling possible. These theories aren't mainstream, but they reflect the desperation to explain the unexplainable. The oddest part? Brandon's phone rang for hours after the call dropped. It didn't go straight to voicemail. This suggests it was still powered on, still somewhere out there. And if it had been submerged or destroyed, that would have changed immediately. Yet no ping, no signal, no location ever came through. In short, Brandon didn't just disappear. He seemed to disconnect from the laws of disappearance. No data, no witness, no evidence. Just a half-finished call and a growing belief that something else, something unseen, was at play. While time may wear down headlines, it doesn't wear down a family's hope. For the Swanson family, Brandon's disappearance wasn't a closed chapter. It was the beginning of a relentless search, not just for their son, but for change. After Brandon vanished on that May night in 2008, his parents, Annette and Brandon Swanson, refused to accept silence as an answer. Day after day, they retraced the possible paths he might have taken, combed through maps, and coordinated with both local law enforcement and volunteers. The terrain was vast, the clues were few, but they held on to one stubborn, sacred belief. He was out there somewhere. The emotional toll was visible. Interviews with the Swansons showed a calm, composed exterior. But the grief lurked just beneath the surface. Every time they spoke about the last words they heard, especially Brandon's final, "oh," expletive, it was like reliving the mystery in slow motion. They never stopped believing their son deserved answers, even if the system seemed slow to deliver them. And it was that very system, the one designed to protect and respond, that came under intense scrutiny. When Brandon's parents initially reported him missing, the response was less than urgent. He was 19, an adult by law. Authorities suggested he had likely wandered off and would return soon. It took hours before a proper search began, hours that could have been critical. This hesitation became a central pain point. In response, the Swansons began to push for legal change. They didn't just want their son back. They wanted to make sure no other family had to feel that helpless. Their efforts resulted in the passing of Brandon's Law in Minnesota in 2009. The law mandates that police must immediately begin investigations for missing adults under suspicious circumstances, eliminating the vague and often harmful wait-and-see period. This achievement, it was both remarkable and bittersweet. Brandon's case had already stolen so much from them: their son, their peace, their trust in the system. But through determination, they turned that pain into purpose. Brandon's Law is now a lifeline for others. It ensures action is taken faster, that no cry for help is brushed aside because of age or assumptions. Yet, for the Swansons, the law is only part of the legacy. The real fight, the search for Brandon, never truly ended. Billboards have gone up, awareness campaigns have kept his name alive, and every May, new volunteers step forward to join the effort. Their story is not just about a mystery. It's about persistence in the face of the unknown. Because for some families, closure isn't a discovery. It's the decision to never stop searching. The disappearance of Brandon Swanson has haunted the quiet plains of Minnesota for over a decade. Not just because he vanished, but because he did so while still on the phone. His voice, calm at first, later tense, eventually cut off by that chilling final expletive. It plays in the minds of anyone who learns about this case. And then, silence. No one knows what Brandon saw. No one knows what caused him to say those last words before his call abruptly ended. It wasn't a dropped call. It wasn't interference. It was something immediate, and perhaps irreversible. That's what makes this case so powerfully disturbing. We're not looking at a disappearance with clues scattered days apart. We're looking at a boy who was right there, on the line, asking for help, taking careful steps, until something stopped him forever. Despite extensive searches, not a single trace of Brandon has been found. Not a shoe, not a wallet, not even the cell phone that had kept his voice alive for those harrowing 47 minutes. Dogs traced his scent down to the edge of a river, then lost it. Some speculate he fell into the water. Others wonder if he had an encounter with someone, or something, that took him by surprise in the darkness. But here's where the story lingers in your mind. It's not just about where Brandon went. It's about how fragile our connection to safety really is. One moment, you're on the phone with a loved one. The next, their voice fades, and all that remains is dead air and questions no one can answer. For the Swanson family, every day is a loop of hope and heartbreak. They hear Brandon's voice in their memories. They see him in every young man who passes by, and they relive that night every time someone asks, "Have you found him yet?" But instead of surrendering to silence, they've chosen to speak louder. They passed Brandon's Law. They raised awareness. They forced the world to look at how easily someone can vanish, even while reaching out. Brandon's story is more than a tragedy. It's a warning, a reminder, a whisper in the dark for those who think they're safe because their phone has a signal. His final words echo because they represent something more chilling than any ghost story. A real human being, lost in the moment between sound and silence. And that's why this mystery endures. Because until Brandon Swanson is found, or until the truth of that night is revealed, we are all still on the line, listening for a voice that may never come back.